Welcome into this Wednesday edition, Blue Sky Live here with you. Chase Parham hanging out this morning. Neil out of town for a few days, but that's okay. Show goes on. Missed a lot of you guys. Appreciate you in the stream already this morning. If you throw some comments in, we'll talk about whatever you want to talk about, and I've got some topics as well for you here today. We're going to recap, or we're going to preview the college baseball off season. It's arrived sooner than we expected. Fully went into Monday expecting Ole Miss to knock off Murray State. That did not happen. So instead, we are going to talk about what's next after that. Yeah, weird day. You can listen to Brian and I. We discussed it that night. That is up at MPW Digital. And Brian had his normal weekly podcast with MPW Digital contributor Colin Brister as well. So those up. I'm not going to get into the minutia of the game. But if you have questions, I'll answer them while we are talking on a show brought to you every day by Blue Sky locations throughout the state of Mississippi, up and down I-55, throughout North Mississippi as well. You know about the catering, the lunch specials. Those are $5.69, couple sides, bread, any size fountain drink for you. And they take care of catering with all Sweet Daddy's options, whether it's just, family reunions, all those different things. They can help you out. Brisket, pulled pork, desserts, side items, vegetables. Plenty of options there with Sweet Daddies and Blue Sky. And Neil is typically in the Clark Ford studio. Clark Ford's in Amory, Mississippi, 662-257-1900. Corey, awesome guy, wants to be your car guy, wants to be your truck guy. He will take care of you. Give him a call no matter where you are in the car buying process, and Corey will help you out. Again, that's Clark Ford in Amory, 662-257-1900. And all guests appear on the Campbell Clinic hotline. Campbell Clinic, now for your orthopedic needs in Oxford. Jeffrey, hello. Says thoughts on why O'Connor decided to leave Virginia for state. Yeah, I got that on the list. We'll get to that a little bit here today because I have not talked about that yet. I'll tell you guys, you know how much I love college baseball, and the Super Regional weekend is incredibly fun. But given how that game ended on Monday, just for my own personal kind of expectations, I was really excited to cover a series, a super regional back at Swayze Field. Would have been the first one since 2009. And I guess one quick aside on that, I mentioned that to Brian the other night, and the stat is very startling that Ole Miss has not had a super regional at home since 2009. But a lot of that is because, and look, it's hard, but because they've only been a national seed, and when I say national seed, I mean top eight seed. I still go by the old vernacular. They've only been a national seed twice. They were the number five overall seed in 2005. They were the number four national seed in 2018. Well, if you aren't a top eight, you have to have help. This year, they would have been lucky. Georgia got beat. Duke won the regional. They would have come to Oxford instead. Murray State's going to play in the Little League Park that's in Durham there. And Ole Miss just didn't get lucky in 14, in 19, in 21. They hosted a regional. So it's been a very similar path the entire time. What happened in 2006? Ole Miss hosted a super regional. They were not a national seed. Miami went into Nebraska, won that regional, then came to Oxford because they were a two seed. Virginia in 2009, they went to UC Irvine. They beat Steven Strasburg and San Diego State on the first game of the regional, and then they beat UC Irvine. They won the regional. They came to Oxford. Speaking of Brian O'Connor in full circle, that was the first time he took the Cavaliers to Omaha in 2009 there through Oxford. So there is that as well. Big Ben asking big picture on baseball why the SEC do so poorly. I don't know yet. That's a great question that I'm trying to figure out. Because nothing necessarily makes sense. If anything, better players should have not been at these smaller schools in such numbers because of the portal. I don't know. I'm going to do a podcast on that, but I want to talk to some people. I don't want to just spout off and say that I have an idea because I really don't. It was a little jarring that, especially from an SEC perspective, you look at it and they can have a max of three SEC teams in the Super Regional this year. And Tennessee's playing Arkansas, obviously one of those. And that's where I was going to lead in a second. But my point I was making, and I'm rambling already, but it's okay because I'm by myself, was that I'm really juiced typically for this Super Regional weekend. And I don't know how much as of right now I'm going to watch. Ole Miss not being in it when they were so close, and me being, I mean, from a media member standpoint, but somewhat involved in the weekend. I don't know. I feel kind of completely different about it. I want nothing to do with Murray State and Duke. I do not want to watch that series this weekend. I hope Murray State wins. Good dudes. They were impressive. There's no doubt about that. The fans were very, I mean, happy about Swayze, but whatever, win the game. I told you guys the other night. I thought Swayze had the best regional environment in 20 years. There's no doubt about that. But otherwise, I don't know, win the game. But I found this funny. So this is where I was going to lead today because I made a post on Twitter this morning on X, whatever we're calling it, and I made it very simple. And I said, who do you want to win the Fayetteville Super Regional? Arkansas plays Tennessee. And we have given a lot of mileage for those two programs here on this podcast between what I believe to be Ole Miss's biggest baseball rival, Arkansas. I've been very clear about that. I think it dates back to 2005. I do not think State and LSU hold a candle to Arkansas as far as baseball specific rivalries and big games and where they have been with each other, its programs. And Ole Miss fans hate Arkansas. I put a poll up a couple years ago that asked who would you rather beat or something related to Ole Miss, LSU, and Arkansas. And Arkansas won the poll. And I thought even Twitter saying that, given that you had these natural football rivalries with LSU and Mississippi State, that was interesting. But this shows you how much Tennessee is hated. I said, who do you want to win the Fayetteville Super Regional? Arkansas 94% to 6% for Tennessee. It's 94 to 6. Arkansas, Ole Miss fans make fun of them so much for the drop pop up, for that being the team that Ole Miss beat in the semifinals to go to Oklahoma to then play Oklahoma and win the national title. And yet, I don't know if it's because you guys are comfortable with Arkansas being in the College World Series, just you don't want them to win the title or what, or maybe you just hate Tennessee that bad, and I think that's probably it. But 94 to 6 startled me. I expected Arkansas to be the prohibitive team that you guys were rooting for if you had to pick one. I mean, I got more votes for natural disasters than you actually picking one of the teams, but Arkansas 94% there in that. Big Ben, Murray State just hit way too lucky BIP wise. Not fair. Almost hitting balls right at people. I mean, Murray State did have a hell of a BABIP. In the championship game, it was 459, I believe. No, 559. Sorry, 559 through the sixth inning when they scored their runs, but they had some great at bats. I'm not taking anything away from them. What you saw was a team that just went on a heater. Murray State hit 279 in Missouri Valley play this season. 279. Not great at all. And that was against Missouri Valley pitching, yet they come to Oxford and spraying balls everywhere. And I'm not making excuses for Ole Miss. They didn't pitch well enough. They walked too many people. You knew Murray State's profile was to take a ton of pitches and make Ole Miss work, and they simply just came up one run short and didn't pitch well enough. There's no doubt about that. It is what it is. No excuses. Because I've seen some people go, oh, Murray State shouldn't have been a 4 seed. Yeah, they should have. Their RPI was 88. They're a freaking 4 seed. They didn't go 28-1 in their conference. They tied for the regular season conference title. They didn't even win it outright. We can talk about what Murray State did well on a weekend and then not make it that Ole Miss got screwed in some way because Ole Miss didn't get screwed. Ole Miss simply lost the freaking baseball games twice to Murray State. That's what they did. You give them a lot of credit for coming back. They were down 12-3 and that thing felt over. But instead, they fought through it. Okay, moving on. Again, we've got plenty to talk about. I don't want to go through the minutia of that game, but I do want to set up the offseason a little bit. I think that's important for where we are and for where these conversations will go. From a scheduling standpoint, we're going to be a little sporadic. Um, Not on shows, but Neil and I being together. He's out through the end of the week, and then we'll kind of see where it goes next week as well. Tyler's dealing with some personal stuff too, so we're a little down from our roster standpoint. But I am going to try to get you podcast every day in our normal schedule, mostly in streams whenever possible. So I hope that this little hiatus we've had the last few days is the most we have for at least a while through in July when I know we're going to take some vacation stuff for football starts. But just giving you a heads up on that. So let's set the off season a little bit for Ole Miss. They're doing exit meetings here probably yesterday and today. Mike and the staff meet with all the players. They go over what went well, what didn't go well before guys go off for summer ball. Some guys will enter the transfer portal. It just is what it is. It's the way that it's the way that things. No, the breakup is not official. Neil and I are fine. We're good. He's just out of town. Um, More people will get into the portal. Ole Miss, as of yesterday, I haven't checked it this morning, but as of yesterday, they only had two players in the portal. Jackson Miller, outfielder, pitcher Cole Ketchum. Not surprising for either of those. I thought Ketchum, he got hurt, but I thought he had some ability. We just never really saw from Miller. He came in as a freshman, didn't play, and now into the portal. But we'll have more on that. We'll check the portal every day. We'll tell you who's in it, either here at 24/7 Sports. And so they'll have exit meetings. Keith Carter and Mike Bianco will meet at some point over the next few days. Probably could be as early as tomorrow, maybe as late as mid next week. I don't think there's any urgency on it because I think everything's status quo. Keith is going to leave Mike's contract exactly where it is. There's no raise. Mike will get a bonus because he hosted a regional. I believe his contract calls for a $25,000 bonus for winning a regional, so he'll get that a little extra. His compensation for the season, unless there's something I'm unaware of, will be 1.675 for the year. That's up from 165 base because it gets 25,000 for the hosting the regional there. But they'll meet. He's not going to extend Mike. He's going to leave him where he is. Mike going into next season, because everybody asks this question nonstop, will have 3 years remaining on his contract. He signed a 6-year agreement after the 2022 season. He has not been extended any point since 2022. He will have 3 years remaining, and his base salary will be $1.65 million. That's the situation. That's where it's going to be going into next season. I don't expect any news out of Keith meeting with Mike. They're just going to get together, talk about what went well. Because look, it was a much better season. They hit a ton of marks. They just fell flat when a game to really extend and get close to reaching that ceiling. I will say that, Big Ben, Murray State played great defensively. That's why they won the regional. They were excellent on making the routine plays. They were not as talented as Ole Miss or Georgia Tech, but they did a hell of a job of playing really fundamental baseball, and that's where Ole Miss fell. Ole Miss has got to hit the transfer portal. We know that. They got to hit it right now. It opened on Monday. Ole Miss is looking for weekend arms. They're looking for outfielders. You're looking for as good a player as you can, and you're probably going to do a similar thing to last year where you're looking for experience and older players and guys who have succeeded at the college level, because you get into a weird spot. And this is the thing that's so different in the baseball transfer portal situation versus basketball and football. Is in basketball and football, if you get a player, you're going to have that player for the season. There is no draft them coming that is going to impede you from that guy playing for you. You can't do that in baseball because you've got to measure what a guy's draft stock is when you are signing him. Because here's a good example, because you saw this guy over the weekend. Western Kentucky outfielder Ryan Weidman, really good player. He hit all over Conference USA. He's going to hit in the SEC or wherever if he does transfer and show up. I didn't sleep well last night, so I'm getting a little coffee in me. Ryan Weidman is going to sign with an SEC or a ACC school, some power school, to play there next year. And he's probably going to sign for a couple $100,000 minimum. I don't know. I haven't really looked into it, but that's a guess. And what then happens is the draft comes. The draft comes July 13th and 14th. So you have no information that is tangible. Let's say Ryan Weidman commits to Ole Miss. I'm just making up something. I'm not saying he is. I have no idea. And let's say he does that on June 10th. The draft isn't until July 13th and 14th. So you go more than a month where you have a certain amount of money tied in NIL to Ryan Weidman, and then he gets drafted higher than expected or exactly where expected on the 13th, and he goes pro. He decides a week later, so we're talking July 20th, whatever the date is, that he's going to skip the transfer year. He's going to skip the rest of his college, and he's going to go pro. Well, you've missed almost the entire portal with a couple $100,000 tied up in a guy that then doesn't show, and there may not be anybody there to take his place and to pay and to get it worked out in that way, and you're just out of luck at that point when you thought you had a star guy coming in next year. That's one baseball caveat that really changes the metrics a little bit on how you go about this, because you have to be very certain and very careful when you're getting these guys who are the top level dudes in the portal but are also draft guys. That's what Ole Miss really tried to do last year. Humphrey had a little bit of draft buzz, but with Stanford and Mormon and, well, Foley was only a sophomore, but some of those guys, Chang obviously, they made sure they were going to get them to campus, but there was also an expectation and some experience when it came to hitting at a high level. And I think you're going to see that a little bit too, because you just can't. You can take a shot, you can maybe take two shots, but for the most part, you can't miss like that because there's going to be nobody else to fill in once that time comes. I mean, Hayden says it, it's very true. The easy fix would be to move the portal window to after the 20th, but such is life. That does not happen. And the draft is too late. I think actually the way to fix it, and you're not going to, baseball changed it for some of these different reasons and changed it to go into the All Star break. The draft used to be June 7th, 8th, 9th, somewhere this week, because you remember Ryan Rollison in 2018 was drafted the night that Ole Miss lost to Tennessee Tech in the regional in Oxford. He was drafted that night. And everybody said, well, hey, let's not do that. Let's not do it when they're still playing. So they moved it later. Well, now we have a transfer window problem. So there's no perfect world, but it definitely causes issues now from a roster construction standpoint. It's just a huge problem. So we'll cover the portal. Everybody knows this about me. I want there to be some substance. I want there to be guys that Ole Miss is legitimately after, not just throw a list of 10 names at you of top guys in the portal having no idea, because Ole Miss simply looking at someone does not mean anything. It is the ultimate speed dating. Everybody contacts everybody, and then you see where visits happen. And when visits happen, then you're cooking. Then you're in a situation where that's real. That guy's taking time, effort. He's trying to make his decision quickly, and you can go from there. So we'll look at that. I am aware of one player, an all conference player at a smaller school that I think Ole Miss will get once he goes into the portal. He's expected to go into the portal maybe as early as today, so we'll have that. But I don't want to be one of those guys that says it and he ends up not going into the portal, and I look like an idiot. So when that happens, we'll talk about that at the time. For Ole Miss, look, I think Luke Hill's the guy that's probably most likely to sign as an underclassman. I've heard some top 5 round grades on Luke. I need to check on that a little more. I sent his name to a couple scouts that I know this morning, just trying to looking for some ballpark info. There's a world where maybe he's the only guy that you lose from an offensive standpoint. There's a world where Judd's back. There's a world where Furness is back. You want to keep Foley and Smithwick. You need Smithwick to play somewhere and hit next year. You just do. I think keeping Braden Randall is important. Look, I'm not saying he's even considering the portal, but he hasn't played consistently, so you always just wonder about it a little bit. I think he's going to be a really good player next year. I think he gives you a profile of a hitter you need that's not so home run dependent. Ole Miss has been way 2-3 outcome this season. Look, the offense wasn't the problem on Monday night. They scored 11 freaking runs, but in general, that has bitten them at times this season. So I think those guys are important. There's a world where Hill's it. Now the pitching side, you have to go get one or two weekend type arms. That's where the emphasis has to be. Ole Miss has some money to throw around in the portal, and they have to take advantage of that. It's the one area of the portal they have not been able to really win outside of, you want to say, Liam Doyle coming from Coastal Carolina. Now he took the big jump from Ole Miss to Tennessee. Insert your jokes and reasons here. And he was a very quality arm at Ole Miss, but he was playing for a bad team, and there was a lot that was going on there. But that's really the only one. They were trying to get the kid from Wichita State a few years ago. I think he ended up at Oklahoma State. His name is escaping me. They've just kind of had a hard time with that premier arm. So that's a critical need for Ole Miss here going into in the offseason. And then you got to figure out who your shortstop is again. Um, you, Owen Pano is on a 2-year deal with the collective. I expect him back, and he needs to take the jump. Look, he's incredibly talented, and he was lost this season. to the point that I felt badly for him, if I'm honest. But they need him next year. He's got to show up. He's got to get this thing done. So we'll see what Ole Miss gets out of him, and that's kind of your portal situation. But just keep those things in mind as we move forward on where this situation is for Ole Miss. Sorry, had something kind of distracted me for a second. Michael meet with Keith. They're not going to they're not going to extend him. He'll have 3 years left after this season, and then 3 years on his contract, not in his tenure. Let me correct that a little bit. Yeah, I kind of do too, Hunter. He says I think Pano's going to turn it around. He's just too talented. Now, is he going to stick at shortstop? I don't know, and that's why you have to figure out. There's two elements to Owen Pano. Okay, there's one element that is simply can he play for you next season and be SEC level, above average SEC level, frankly, and then two, can he play shortstop? Those are two completely different things that come together, and you need answers on both of them. I think Joel Mangrum is a great resource for Ole Miss to do well on the mound side. You know, you look at it last year. The one guy that he went out and got was Will McCausland that he believed in the most. McCausland, they need him back. He has a year of eligibility remaining. They really need McCausland to come back. He could fill multiple roles for Ole Miss next season. Mangrum gives you so much pedigree from being with the Guardians, so much reputation, and then did a good job this year to where I think he could potentially be an X factor in the portal. We'll see. Guys want to get better and they want to get drafted really highly. That matters a lot. So we'll see what he can do. I think that's going to really help Ole Miss. They're much better at using technology. They're much better at using analytics. He has changed the way that they approach pitching in all different ways, and I think that he can do that in a way that will be convincing to portal players once they get in. Look, this could take a minute. Don't freak out when Ole Miss doesn't have guys within a week. You got to remember a lot of teams are still playing, 16 of them. They've got players that are getting into the portal once the season ends. And then the Cape has become a breeding ground for guys getting into the portal. Okay. There's no doubt about that. Ben asking last year, lost guys in the portal. Yeah, no doubt. I mean, you had Fisher, you had Dole, you had Mendez. Those were critical. You had Quinn and Saunier. I mean, take a second, really, because I don't know that, and I know that this is one of those deals where Murray State is stinging to the point that we are not looking at the total picture. But Ole Miss being as competent as they were on the mound in the back half of the regular season, because they got much better on the mound in the back half of the regular season, despite losing Dole, Mendez, Saunier, and Quinn, who all had legitimate roles at their new places. Dole and Mendez weekend starters. Quinn threw a ton of innings for Georgia, and to Texas's credit, they really found a role that worked for Grayson Saunier, especially in the second half of the year. Yeah, look, you've got to retain. You've got to make sure you keep Cade Townsend. You got to make sure you keep Braden Randall, Owen Pano. There are fixtures. I think keeping Smithwick and Foley is very important. There are fixtures that you simply need to keep. Frankly, a guy like Ryan Rodriguez could be valuable next year. Don't let somebody like that slip through the cracks. There's a lot of retention that is necessary for Ole Miss. No, I do not believe Dustin Mercer from Murray has any eligibility left. Otherwise, you might have told him just to stay in town or come back as soon as he gets done with Duke or the College World Series or whatever else happens there. And I won't be shocked if they give Duke a freaking war for 3 games. They're like I said, they're on a heater that they're riding right now. So there's no doubt about that. Um, Brian O'Connor, Mississippi State. Mississippi State really looked at him from day one. Not always do you get your first choice, so I'll give Selman and Mississippi State credit for that. He's a hell of a baseball coach. You look at Brian O'Connor's resume. Again, he was at Virginia since 2004. Took over a program that was barely over 500, and they've been good pretty much every year except one since then. They went 12 and 18 in 2018, and he's had at least a 500 record or in the ACC all but one other time. They went 14 and 16 in 2019. The year they won the College World Series, they actually were 15 and 15 in the league, finished second in the Coastal. But here's what happened. He could have stayed at Virginia, get a really big statue, wrote out his tenure, and been a good program. They went to the College World Series 3 of the last 4 years prior to this year. Man has been to 7 of the last 15 College World Series, if I'm doing that math right. One, two, three, four, five, six, seven. Yes, 7 of the last 15 College World Series. But Virginia is not in the SEC. And when it comes to money and resources, Virginia was not doing for him what he believed was necessary to compete at a national level. And that made him ripe for the picking. That made him possible to be intrigued by Mississippi State. A&M went a long way down the road with him a year ago. I think it was A&M, and he ended up not doing that. What ends up happening a lot, and I mean, I'm not even making a joke, is people visit College Station and then decide not to take the gig. Again, I make a lot of A&M jokes. This time, that was even not an A&M joke. It's just true. So they got a hell of a baseball coach. I guess I'm a little desensitized to it though, because number one, Ole Miss hasn't beaten Mississippi State in a while anyway. So I don't know. I don't know how much impact there is necessarily on Ole Miss in a direct way. It's just the league getting better. Mississippi State was an average team in the SEC this year. They were a bad team the last 2 years, and they're probably not going to be bad next year. Brian Haydad, who I really trust on Mississippi State beat, has called this a Godfather offer for Brian O'Connor, meaning salary. I've heard numbers over two, meaning resources, NIL, everything they can do. Because what Mississippi State just did is they chose baseball. It's been their favorite sport throughout. They chose baseball, and that they chose to be the team that goes, we are going freaking all in on college baseball, and probably at the detriment of basketball, and for sure the detriment of football. Now, punting, it's probably too strong, but there's no doubt that if what I'm hearing from people who cover Mississippi State, not myself, I don't know. I don't know. Nobody has really told me anything that's not been sourced to another media member. But if it's true, and what I'm hearing is accurate, they are absolutely trying to win at college baseball and realizing that their ceiling in football is low. You can make it that or whatever you want to make it. I don't know. Maybe it is. Maybe it's true. I mean, there's a real world right now where Mississippi State's the 15th job in the SEC in football, and your ceiling is so low. But if the money is correct that I'm hearing, salary, resources, NIL, it's taking a chunk from basketball and football. And you have to realize that it's not just rev share. You can say, well, okay, rev share in that 20.5, which is really 18 because 2.5 goes to scholarship increases. You can say of the 18 that baseball is going to get 5% and football is going to get 75 and basketball is 15, and it's all in the realm. But it's the NIL on top of that that is going to separate Power 5 programs and even programs inside the SEC from one another. Is what is next? What's that next amount? Is it 18 that goes to 24, goes to 30, goes to 21, and how do you divvy up those things? And what Mississippi State is saying is we're going to divvy up a ton to baseball, and when you do that, it is going to absolutely impact the football program. I don't know if maybe they're choosing basketball and baseball and they're really impacting the football program. I don't know that answer. But there's no doubt that you have to be impacting the football program in very major ways with what they're doing right now. He's going to win. I mean, they can probably host a regional next year. They care. They have resources. If they want to put the money there, they have a ton of money for that program. Mississippi State made a hell of a hire, and they're going to win at college baseball if that's what they decide to do. I just wonder what the downstream effects for that are and what the tributaries are from that as they move forward, because there's no doubt there are going to be those things. No doubt. It's a bad day for Jeff Lebby. That's the answer. It's a great day for Mississippi State baseball fans. It's a great day for Brian O'Connor. It's a bad day for Jeff Lebby. And I even the most diehard Mississippi State football fan, I don't know how you would argue that. I just really don't. I think that's the bottom line. And look, do what you want. I mean, I'm not even really criticizing it because maybe State's football ceiling was fairly low anyway. Maybe their ceiling was 8-4, 9-3 with the Mullen once in a lifetime 10 and whatever that they did, which again that would get them in. But maybe they don't want to sacrifice baseball to the level to hope for that one season. I'm speculating, but that makes sense to me. It really does. So that's Brian O'Connor. I mean, we watched him dogpile in his first College World Series. That was the day after the time that Ole Miss had the lead going into the eighth. We're 5 outs from Omaha. He'll win. There's no doubt about that. Speaking of Fields, wrote a story last night. I talked to Keith Carter about Ole Miss not yet finding the right partner. I think that's the correct way to put this. Um, the right partner for corporate owned field playing surface logos. I picked out 4 examples for last season. Maybe there are more coming this year, but last year there were 4 that stuck out. Tennessee has Pilot on the playing surface at Neyland Stadium. That was part of a 20-year agreement that has signage everywhere. It was not just a playing surface agreement, but they had that. Missouri's probably the one most like what Ole Miss is looking for. They have shelter insurance on one 25-yard line. They have equipment share on the other 25-yard line. Arkansas has Tyson Foods and Walmart on each 25-yard line. You guys saw that when Ole Miss played them last year, and that's not shocking. That was an expectation. And then Kroger Field is Kentucky's actual stadium name, or what they call their stadium when they talk about or write about it. And because this went into play last year with the NCAA allowing playing surface logos, Kroger Field is now on the playing surface as well. But that's a much larger situation because their field is called that too. Kentucky in 2017 renamed Commonwealth Stadium Kroger Field for a 12-year agreement. It started at 1.85 million. I don't know if it went up since then, but those are the ones that immediately went in for the SEC. And what you saw last year was while those 4 schools did it immediately, they those companies all have headquarters in the university locations. Equipment Share, Shelter Insurance in Columbia, they're Columbia companies. Obviously, Walmart and Tyson Foods are Northwest Arkansas companies. Pilot's headquarters are in Knoxville. Kroger, a little different. It's in Cincinnati, but again, it's a much larger situation there. Keith just said that they don't want to go cheap. That because if you go cheap, you have a hard time raising it up, and that matters. That you want market value right off the top. His quote to me: "It's just proving hard to find. If you sell it too cheaply initially, then you can't get it where it needs to be down the road. It's about finding the right partner. We don't want to put something that makes us look NASCAR or gimmicky or anything." And I think the location of the corporate offices in those other schools is important here because what you're seeing is hesitancy from the corporations, and again, maybe these guys end up on fields in Starkville or Oxford or somewhere, so I'm not alienating them or saying it wouldn't be good ideas because it would. But C Spire is very big into Mississippi State and Ole Miss. FedEx is obviously big into multiple schools, Memphis, Ole Miss. You're seeing it more. Sorry, I choked up a little bit. You're seeing it more in places where they are very committed to one school, even if they're larger corporations or companies. You're seeing it in one school standpoint. So I don't know what that means for Ole Miss. Keith has been more excited about the possibility of jersey patches when it comes to the SEC. The NCAA looks like they're going to be okay with it. The NCAA has been relenting on a lot of these things because in one of the few things they are getting right, they're aware that schools simply have to improve revenue as they move forward. And because of that, jersey patches make a lot of sense. You see it all over the pro landscape. NBA teams are averaging 10.6 million in revenue from jersey patches during one NBA season. So annually, 10.6 on average per team. Some higher, some lower. In Learfield, the big multimedia giant for college athletics, they're estimating that even the really, really small schools could get about 500,000, and that the largest programs maybe as much as $12 million annually for jersey patches down the road. It's a huge number. So maybe even if Ole Miss isn't the Texas or somebody where They get the 12 million. Maybe Ole Miss is worth 8 million, 9 million a year for a jersey patch. That's huge. I mean, that would be worth it because you're seeing very little blowback in professional sports with the jersey patches. Baseball's put some logos places. The NBA is fully committed to the jersey patch, and you just don't see a lot of negativity to that. I mean, there is some out there. I don't love it, but at that number, I completely get why you do it. It makes all the sense in the world. That's a ton of money. But you need the NCAA to be okay with it, and you need Nike to be okay with it because Nike has a rule in its contracts right now that they can be the only logo outside of conference affiliation on the jerseys. So there have been a lot of schools kind of going in together to, I don't know if put pressure is the right word, but it kind of is. Put pressure on Nike to relent a little bit on that, to open up the possibilities that with NCAA approval and them being okay with it, that they could start trying to figure out the jersey logos. I mean, yeah, as WikiPro says, as a soccer fan, jersey logos have been around for decades and are now considered a design feature on the jersey. Yeah, I mean, with that kind of money, I don't know how you have any other choice. I mean, there's no doubt about that. Yeah, Love's in OKC is the one that comes to my mind the most, and that's not just because of Neil or following them much for whatever reason. I guess the contrast with the Love's colors. Big Man's right. Problem with Ole Miss is Mississippi just doesn't have any big companies and no big Fortune 500 founder alumni. Yeah, I mean that's bottom line to this in so many ways. There's no doubt about that. That's the reason. But that's an update from Keith. I thought that was interesting. Speaking of the NBA, they start tomorrow night with Thunder and Pacers. Neither franchise has an NBA title, unless you want to count the Supersonics from back in the day. They do have one, but the Thunder, since they've been in Oklahoma City, do not. Indiana does not as well. And the other big news out of the NBA yesterday, Tom Thibodeau let go by the New York Knicks. It's continuing a trend the last few years, but two this year, of NBA teams firing successful head coaches. You had Malone with the Nuggets earlier this year, and then now Thibodeau after carrying the Knicks to the Eastern Conference Finals for that. I was trying to find the quick line on tomorrow night. I think it was 8.5 or 9. The Thunder are favored. I think the money line for Indiana was like plus 370. It was very large. Last I saw, yeah, 320. Indiana plus 320. Oklahoma City by 9.5 tomorrow night. Tonight you get NHL, Florida and Edmonton. I'm kind of ready for a Canadian team to win. They really care. If I'm going to pick one for some reason, I don't know if it's Connor McDavid or what, but I I'm for Edmonton in this. So that kicks off tonight. It's a rematch from last year, Edmonton and Florida, and then again tomorrow night, Oklahoma City and Indiana. So you get kind of alternating finals for a while if you care about those, and then the softball World Series final is tonight. Also, that is Texas Tech, Najari Kennedy, who beat Ole Miss in the first round. And then Texas got in as well. So a Texas Tech final there in that. I want to go to football. I want to look at FPI in a second. Before we do that, let me tell you about Northeast Spark, the fastest, most reliable fiber internet option available. Whether you're streaming the Rebels or connecting with family and friends, they offer both residential and business packages with speeds up to 2 gigabits or more. Register for service in eSpark.com. eSpark, get connected, stay local. And really, they are the best provider. It's not me just saying that. I've used them for a long time. Customer service is excellent. And I've seen bad customer service with other companies. I don't have to mention them out loud. One is if you're an OG of the podcast, you remember when we used to talk about them being a potential drug front when they were in town. But I've heard bad stuff with them even here recently. So again, nespark.com. Check them out. Ask, and they can hook you up if they're available in your neighborhood or your location here in Oxford and the surrounding areas. And podcast is brought to you by G&M Pharmacy, 662-236-2222. They deliver locally in the Oxford area, and they offer medicine for your prescriptions the same time each month and take care of you. One trip to the pharmacy, one delivery. You have everything you need when you need it with G&M. So let's get into FPI a little bit. ESPN releasing those rankings yesterday, and look, this is all kind of fodder a little bit because I like that idea, Wicked. Renaissance being local. That makes sense to me. Anyway, sorry. So FPI comes out. That stands for, I think they went real creative. I think it just means Football Power Index. It does. But it's ESPN's analytic metric for football season. And look, we don't know everything yet. So this is a little all over the place because there's still stuff about these teams we don't know. The portal era has made this more of a crapshoot, but I still find it interesting. Ole Miss FPI checking in at 15.9. That's ranked 13th nationally. So quickly, I'll get you to top 15. A lot of SEC flavor here. Duh. Texas number one. Everybody loves the Longhorns, despite a fairly significant schedule. We're going to look at that a ton as we go on through the summer and into the fall. But significant schedule there for Texas. Texas won, Georgia two. Again, significant schedule, but they get them all at home this time. They were on the road last year. They still made their way into the playoff. They still won the SEC. But Georgia has that same schedule. Alabama number three. That's a little schedule related there for that. So again, 1, 2, 3 SEC schools. Ohio State four, Penn State five, Oregon six, three Big Ten schools. Notre Dame seven, Texas A&M just eating up spots there in the top 10 that they don't deserve. Computers love them every year. Pundits love them every year, and then they go 8-4, 7-5. It's what happens. What's going to happen again? Everybody's going to look. I like Marcel Reed, not a bad quarterback, but they're going to overplay him. They're going to hype it up, and then they're going to go 7-5 or 8-4. I refuse to buy in on Texas A&M until they prove something, and they have not proven it outside of the COVID year, and we don't count that year for anything. Texas A&M at 8 is just laugh out loud funny at this point. Miami at 9, they're coming off Cam Ward. That's too high, not going to happen. Tennessee at 10, Clemson at 11, LSU 12, Ole Miss 13, Auburn 14, South Carolina 15. I agree with Wicked. He says not a huge fan of FPI. It just seems inaccurate because of its reliance on past performance in the previous 4 years, and that just isn't applicable in the post NIL and transfer portal world. No, I'm with you. And Ole Miss has a quarterback that's played one meaningful series. Now, it was a hell of a series, but one meaningful series. I talked about it. I was on the 24/7 Sports college football show this week, and that was one of the questions, and we talked about Simmons a little bit. But when I look at I think I'm taking it more like this because I'm agreeing with you, but I'm taking it more like this. When I look at the teams around Ole Miss, I think they don't even necessarily have to just go crazy and hit every ceiling to be in the conversation in November because these other teams have flaws too. And the SEC is going to get several teams in. And all you got to do, Ole Miss has got to survive that front half without anything stupid. And then their fifth game of the season, play a monumental game against LSU in Oxford and see what happens. And that will dictate what Ole Miss's potential is going into the second half of the SEC season. Auburn has flaws and they're right behind Ole Miss. South Carolina is overrated. Maybe they end up making the playoff. Maybe they're fantastic. But Lenora Sellers has to take a jump here. I think we are putting so much hype on him that we have somehow made him overrated. LSU one spot in front of Ole Miss at 12. Huge game. 12 versus 13 preseason rankings. Tennessee's got a huge quarterback change without Nico. They're at 10, but they've got issues. Again, A&M's at 8. If everything went scratch, Ole Miss would be 2 spots out of the playoff because it takes top 11 really to get in, at least. The group of 5 gets a team. 13 would leave you out. Here's what's interesting too, though, is there's a playoff percentage projection up here too. What I gave you was sheer power rank numbers. What Ole Miss ranked 13th. Ole Miss ranks 12th in percentage chance to make the playoff. And again, this goes by FPI related to schedule. So they give you a power rank, then they show you the schedule, and they see where it goes from there. Texas is too high, but they'll probably get it done. They're going to be good, but this feels way too high. 83.9. Georgia 78. Ohio State 70. Alabama 66. Penn State 63, Oregon 57, Clemson 47, Miami 46, Notre Dame 45, Tennessee 38, A&M 34, slightly edging out Ole Miss at 30.7. Of note, while Ole Miss was one spot worse than LSU in total FPI ranking, they are one spot ahead of LSU in projection to make playoff. 30.7 for Ole Miss, 30.3 for LSU. Next SEC team all the way down to Auburn at 21.8, and I just do not buy it. Neil firmly believes that Auburn has to make the college football playoff for Hugh Freeze to keep his job, and I just don't see any way that is the case. Back on that old conversation, Hunter and Drew both talking about ceasefire. I would be a little surprised if ceasefire ever made a choice between Ole Miss and State. They know that both those places are where their bread is buttered. I would be having some knowledge of that company, not as much as maybe some of you guys, but I would be a little surprised if they ever chose one over the other in something as visible as playing surface logos. What you're seeing here in this too is that total FPI or ranking or power doesn't matter as much because it depends on your schedule and who you're in with. Like Florida is a great example of this. They're talking about here that are they the most overrated team? They have that same murderous schedule that they handled better than we all thought they would a year ago. There's no doubt about that. They were elevated. They're 18th nationally. I do not think MPW Digital has the pay grade and the ability for the on-field logo. I mean, Keith would probably take my call if I thought that I could make it work, but I'm having a hard time making that one work in my head as we're sitting here. Don't think we got that one. So Florida, 18th overall, 18th nationally in their FPI number. Projected wins, however, 6.4. Meaning that ESPN, if their projected win totals are correct, and again, take all this with all the salt, they're projecting Florida to be closer to the Liberty Bowl than the college football playoff at 18th nationally. 6.4. By comparison, they have Ole Miss at 8.3 wins, 3.8 losses. Makes sense why Vegas has their over/under at 8.5. They have Auburn at 7.5 wins, 4.5 losses. They have LSU at 7.9 wins, 4.2 losses, which is why they're behind Ole Miss in the playoff projections. They are projected to have a worse record than the Rebels, even though they have a higher overall FPI. They play Clemson in game one. That's probably the reason for the variance. That's my guess. A&M, they're projecting them to go 8.1 to 4.1. The jokes write themselves. Thanks, ESPN, for that. They have Alabama going 9.6 wins, 2.8 losses. Georgia 10.1 wins, 2.3 losses. And Texas 10.4 wins, 2.1 losses. So again, Florida 18th, but 6.4 wins is the projection. Arkansas at 22, 6.1 wins, exactly in line for a bowl game in the Liberty Bowl, but from a straight power ranking, 22. And compare that to let's take the recruiting flavor of the year, Texas Tech. They got all that double legal oil money. They're pumping a ton of money into NIL. And Texas Tech is projected, again, this is FPI projections, to be 35th nationally in FPI. 35th. So we're talking 17 spots behind Florida. Florida at 18. I guess 18 spots, whatever. Can't do math. It's fine. 18. 17. No, I was right. And Texas Tech, 7.9 wins, 4.2. So if they could run the Big 12, TCU and Texas Tech, there's actually some Big 12 teams kind of all in a logjam. Kansas State, the highest at 21. And then Arizona State at 24. I like the under there. BYU at 29. Kansas at 30. TCU and Baylor at 32, 33. And Texas Tech at 35. So Texas Tech and really improved the roster. They're trying. They're at least in the conversation if you think K-State's going to falter at all. If K-State runs through it, then they just run through it. But if it gets into that other logjam of teams, Texas Tech could have a chance to get there out of the Big 12, and they are ranked 35th nationally, but yet they're projected to have 8 wins. Florida, 6 wins at 18. So watch it inside those numbers. Chance to make the national championship. How many teams are they even giving a chance to? I guess they're in theory giving a chance to 25 teams, but any percentage over 3%, let's make that the cutoff. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Ole Miss barely squeaking into that list at 3.8. Again, fun thing to look at. I do think it gives you some information as long as you keep it in extreme context of where that could be. Um, 8.3 for Ole Miss. I think that makes sense. I have a hard time having that be anything outside of something that makes sense for me. I don't see Ole Miss falling off, and if Ole Miss goes 10-2, they exceeded expectations. Austin Simmons was awesome in year one. They were better up front than we thought. They were better at running back than we thought, and then they met expectations on the defensive line with the homegrown guys. Their wide receivers replaced the departed wide receivers in a very effective way. Harrison Wallace, Stribling, got another good year out of Caden Lee. There's a path, but 8.5 makes sense to me. So just you can look at it. It's linked on I think multiple message boards at this point. It's been all over, but you can look for yourself to where that's sitting. If Ole Miss made national championship, Austin Simmons would be a Heisman candidate. Yeah, 100%. He's already got like the 12th best odds for a Heisman winner this coming season, which is too high. But I think plus 3,300. I was asked about that on that show this week too. I think Austin really liked baseball. I think he didn't want to quit, but he had no choice. I mean, at some point, if you're going to be the starting quarterback, and because of the injury, because he would have. I'm not questioning Austin. I understand what he said, but I understand the dynamics of Tommy John. He would not have been effective to throw a baseball without surgery. He just wouldn't. Somebody asked me to rank super regionals in interest. Okay, and again, I've got to kind of get back in the mode. I mean, I'm in sort of avoidance right now for a few days. Probably won't be by the time it gets here, but right now, kind of avoidance. Your Friday games, again, remember 4 super regionals start on Friday, 4 start on Saturdays, the way this works. Miami is at Louisville, so an ACC team guaranteed to get in there. That starts at 3 o'clock on Friday. Florida State and Oregon State, another ACC team, gets a chance. They're going across the country to Corvallis. That's at 6 o'clock. These are Eastern time, so 2 and 5 on Friday. Arizona, North Carolina, another ACC team. A lot of ACC representation against a team Ole Miss beat on the opening day of the season in Arizona. That's at 11 a.m. And then Coastal Carolina and Auburn, which I find to be a very intriguing series. I'll get to that in a second. But that is at 8 o'clock Central. Late game there in Auburn at 8 o'clock on Friday. Your Saturday games are UT San Antonio against UCLA. That is who the now Murray State Duke winner will play the opening game in the College World Series. UTSA and UCLA at 6 Eastern, or sorry, 6 Central. Murray State Duke at noon on Saturday. West Virginia LSU. West Virginia coming out of the Clemson Regional. LSU winning over Little Rock in Game 7. 1 o'clock on Saturday, so no night game there. And then Tennessee and Arkansas. There'd be drama, if nothing else. 4 o'clock starting on Saturday, 3 o'clock the next day on Sunday. Watchability. Miami and Louisville. I mean, the watchability is not high. It's a 5, but I'll want Dan to win. So I'll root for my guy if I watch any at all. They walked through the Vanderbilt Regional, getting a win over Vanderbilt on day 2, and then beating Wright State in the final. So it's a 5. Florida State, Oregon State's really interesting. You get Jamie Arnold, Wes Mendez for Florida State. I think Oregon State is one of the more fascinating teams in a long time. Their ability to put a schedule together as an independent, to win 45 games, to keep a really high RPI despite playing that independent schedule. There's a lot to sort of root for with Oregon State if you're just a college baseball fan. So that's a 7.5 for me. If I'm just watching baseball without caring about teams or laundry and just looking at sort of stories, I think that's pretty high. Arizona, North Carolina is a great series, but I can't make myself really care at any point. I mean, it's a 3 as far as me having a ton of interest beyond North Carolina being good. Arizona going 42-15 after leaving Arlington 0-3 to start the year. They got popped 3 times, and then there they are. If you just want kind of different type teams, interesting stories, Coastal and Auburn is good. You've got Coastal 51-11. They're legitimate. They're real. They have two great arms. They're really good number one and number two on the mound. They held their starter, went through the regional, got a 1-0, I think, win over East Carolina to clinch. Now they didn't have a very difficult region because Florida was a Kevin O'Sullivan abomination at that point, head case. But Coastal Carolina's good. Auburn has played really good baseball. Butch Thompson's one of the most underrated coaches in the country per average fan. Auburn does not put a ton of resources in that program outside of paying him a very competitive salary, and they just win whenever they can. Auburn has done a hell of a job. Had Auburn beaten Ole Miss the last week in the regular season, I think if I had a vote, I would have picked him to be SEC Coach of the Year. So Auburn 41-18, hosting Coastal. You get Ike Irish, you get the Coastal pitchers. I like that. That's like a 9 for me. That's really high. Coastal and Auburn, UTSA and UCLA. Outside of had it been Ole Miss in the opposite game in Omaha, I don't care. I'm for UTSA. It's a fun story. They went into Austin and knocked off Texas, so you got to root for that. I like the Roadrunners just because they're not Cinderella. They ended up beating Texas 3 times this season, 47-13. But I'm for them against the Bruins, Murray State, and Duke. I'm telling you, I don't think I'll watch a second of this series. I don't have any interest, and I don't really want to watch a game in that park. I want Murray to win, but with Murray trying to get to Omaha, a Missouri Valley team making it, everybody rooting for the 4 seed. If I'm being intellectually honest about interest, I'll give it an 8 because of that angle. But outside of that, I don't care. West Virginia LSU. Good luck to the Mountaineers. I fully expect LSU to win that in 2 games. I know West Virginia's playing good baseball. I know they walked through the regional there in Clemson, but Clemson kicked it around. Kentucky was not an elite team. I like LSU. They've got their one scare. They'll play well this weekend at the box. And then Tennessee and Arkansas. It's a 10. If you're just trying to see compelling entertainment, you've got Tennessee and their merry men of psychopaths against an Arkansas team that just plays very level, very steady. Dave Van Horn just kind of keeps them going and whatever and blah blah blah. That's compelling. That's good stuff. I like that it's Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Give a little something there, so that's a 10. But otherwise, I'm it's fine. I mean, I will watch the SEC games because I will end up getting into the SEC games because I think they're some of the better, more compelling matchups. But outside of that, I think Florida State and Oregon State's the only one where I'm really locked in and going, okay, what does this look like and what do you do with this? Otherwise, I can't make myself really care. And yes, all those times were Eastern. So Saturday, you're talking about 6 o'clock, UTSA, UCLA, Murray State, Duke, noon, West Virginia, LSU 1. Yeah. Hunter says I'm out without Ole Miss in, but I don't care who wins as long as Tennessee or Arkansas doesn't win, and one can't. So 50% there. Ginger, I could handle Arkansas winning. I just want Tennessee out, and probably LSU. Still won't watch. Yeah, I mean, I think had Arkansas been playing anyone else, and I put that poll up, it would have been Arkansas with the 6%, not the 95%. Jenny Moyer on Twitter goes, "That's what a diabolical poll. I have nothing against Dave Van Horn, even though I can't stand Arkansas otherwise. Respectable program. Can't say that about Vitello or Vols baseball." I'll check the little thing again. Still says 93.4% to Arkansas, 6.6% for Tennessee. The people have spoken. Wicked Brew, let's just give another title to LSU and move on from this season. Least amount of potential damage possible. Drew, let's let UNC win it. Nope, can't see Arkansas win. Too much of a rivalry in baseball. That's what I feel. I mean, there was a world where I thought it would at least be 80-20 just because you didn't want Arkansas to end up there. John is as bad as an Ole Miss fan that I think Dave Van Horn should get a title. Look, if you take out the rivalry portion of what Ole Miss fans think and kind of where I have been on this. I think schools who really care about a sport, and college baseball being one of those, their fans deserve a title. I thought Mississippi State deserved a title. I thought Ole Miss deserved a title, and I think Arkansas deserves a title. Tennessee did not deserve a title. They got one because Vitello's a good coach, and they were able to front run to a title. They didn't deserve it though. Fan base didn't deserve it. Arkansas deserves it. Ole Miss deserved it. State deserved it. Vanderbilt put a lot of resources in for a long time and had an advantage. I don't really mind when they win. Doesn't bother me. For whatever reason, Vanderbilt doesn't bother me at all. Regular sized men, does the players' antics at Tennessee hurt them as pro prospects? I mean, it's independent, but I mean, you do want level. If there's something that can be, I mean, it's not going to override talent, but if you've got this or that and you've got somebody who you think could be a head case, I don't know. Ginger had Arkansas. If Arkansas had won the title in 22, would they be pulling for us to finally win one? Probably not, or at least not many people. Big Ben, NC State, asterisk, deserved it. Chase, they were good. I don't think it was a sure thing NC State was going to win. I mean, that was a really good state team. It's one thing that I do think we're a little bit revisionist history that NC State was just going to walk through. Look, they were hot as hell. There's no doubt about that. But that would have been very, very competitive the rest of the way. Hunter, I mean, Van Horn should have one, but they didn't catch a fly ball. So, ... Very true. John, I don't wish what happened to them in 2018 on anyone. No, look, I've been very, 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 very vocal about that. I don't see how David Van Horn sleeps at night. It would haunt me for all of my days at that point. I mean, it really would. Until you get one, and maybe he never does. I don't know how you would handle it. I really don't. His bracket's pretty open here, though, if he finds a way in. I mean, Ole Miss and LSU have a hell of a bracket. You do the math. They're sitting in there with UCLA, UTSA, Duke, Murray State. That's two of the other teams that are going to be in Omaha with Arkansas and LSU if they make it on that side of the bracket. I think that's a pretty good draw. There's no doubt about that. So we'll see. I think that's where we are. Kind of all I have for today. Appreciate you guys in the stream. I started a little early, and I do appreciate you being there. I don't argue with what any of you guys are saying about Tennessee and things they have going on. No argument there whatsoever. I'll have Jeffrey with me tomorrow. I think I'll confirm with him. But either way, we'll get a podcast tomorrow. We'll keep hanging out. Again, I'm going to really work hard to keep you guys on schedule despite summer situations and whatnot going on. But I do appreciate you as well. And as always, good to see you guys. Kind of missed you as we've had a few different days there. I have not looked at Murray's odds to make Omaha. I mean, they were stupid. I mean, they were astronomical before the regional. I did go over those. Then we kind of laughed about it. So yeah, I'm for Murray State to make the College World Series. There's no doubt. I want them to beat Duke. I want them to keep playing. Why not? It's a fun story. It's awesome. I mean, yeah, Wicked's right. Their odds right now are 50-50. So okay, coverage at 24/7 Sports for me. Obviously, Neil, if he's not here, rebelgrove.com. More podcasts coming your way on the network for multiple topics. Take care. Have a good day, and we'll talk to you soon.